Good morning. We're learning as a schus for Shlema for Ilana Chaya Baserach. We are in Daf Lamed Aleph Amid Beis. We're going to go back a bit.
Mayor,
What?
the mayor.
Oh, and for Meir Ben Cyril Perel. Thank you. Yeah, distracted. Um, yeah. So we'll just quickly. We're going to do a little recapping because it's very necessary, and it's a little bit hard to follow the cheshbon of the Gemara here. So we'd seen the Mishnah on Daf Lamed Aleph Amid Aleph, where it said Nafla Saka v'Shachta. If a knife fell and as it fell it shechted, Al Shachta Kedarka Psula. Even though it did a kosher shchita, it's possible. You have to shecht it. It can't be that it happened by itself. And we said, the Gemara had said, time of the nafla pilahu ksheir of avagav loy mechav. Mantana loy be in kavana l'shchita. Amar Rav Nasan. This is Rav Nasan that was brought in the Brisa. The Tani Oishi is the year of the Mechavri. Zork sakin lenoyetz of a kaiser of halchas shach the gedak Rav Nasan machshir champais. They have a machlekes between Rav Nasan and the Chachamim. If you threw a sakin, a knife, which is different than the Mishnah. The Mishnah was where it fell by itself, so there was no human impetus behind it. That everyone agrees is not a kosher shchita. But if the person dropped it, if you threw a sakin, then Reb Nasan will say it's kosher because you don't need a machshava of doing it l'shem shchita. You just need that the person intended to throw it. And we said that Allah is Reb Nasan. Then so now we'll skip down toward the bottom about 2 lines up in the narrow lines. Itmar nida shenensa v'tavla. Yehuda Marav to hire lebesa v'asur lecha b'truma. Yehuda Marav says that it's going to be if a nida that was toivel without her intent, shaloi b'kavana. She didn't intend to be toivel. So as far as eating truma, it's not going to kosher tefillah. As far as being with her husband, it is a kosher tefillah. That's Rav Shita. Rav Yochanan says, no, you need kavana even to be metarha for her husband. And we encapsulated that, we restated that, as Rav Yochanan holds that even for Chullin, you need a kavana, whereas Rav says you don't need a kavana for Chullin. So let's go on. So we brought then that this was a machlokes really tanoim on this question of whether that Rav and Rabbi Yochanan both have tanoim that support them. Which was Tava L'Chulan, about 10 lines down. Maybe we'll start from there. We'll start from here. Esvei Rav L'Ravna. Tava L'Chulan v'Hochzak L'Chulan. Someone is Toivel having a mind that he wants to be able to eat Chulin. V'Hochzak L'Chulan, and he's Toivel L'Chulan and he has a mind for Chulin. Also L'Maiser. It's going to be also for him to eat Maiser because that tefillah was not l'shem Maiser. Hochzuk in, lehochzuk light. It's mashma only because he has a mind for l'shem Chulin, but if not. Harikam. Aval b'she hochzuk l'chulin also l'maiser. Esvei tov v'loy hochzuk. Ki'il loy tov. Someone who has tov without any intention at all. It's as if he wasn't tov. Ma'alav ki loy tov klal, like it loy tov l'maiser. It's only for maiser. Aval tov l'chulin. Aval tov l'chulin. But it is a good tefillah l'chulin. Who saw a dichut kamatchile? He thought this was just a dichut. That means that which he was teaching up, that it's avotava l'chulin, that it's going to be a kosher tefillah l'chulin, which is supporting the man da'amar, not like Rav, who says a tefillah l'chulin that isha she'nensa is mutter for her husband because a tefillah l'chulin, something done l'chulin, doesn't need kavana. Navik dakvash b'Tanya tov v'lehuchzot mutter l'chulin v'asal l'maisa. We found a brisa that says specifically tov v'lehuchzot mutter l'chulin v'asal l'maisa, that is mutter l'chulin. So we have a brisa supporting Rav that chulin you don't need kavana. Amalei Abai Rav Yosef. So you have this brisa, it's Shver Rav Yochanan. Amalei Rav Yochanan, who damik Rav Yochanan ben Yosef, the Tanya Rav Yosef ben Yosef, Omer, b'chayvis. Mat hamaloi mishenis. What does the Torah have to say 2 times? What does the Torah have to say that you wash the beged of the Mitzorah a second time? We already know. We already said you did it 1 time. What do you have to say you're doing it a second time? That when a person is toivel the beged for mitzayra is also chul, and it's not kachim. And the Torah is telling you it has to be ladas like the first. It has to be intentional like the first kvisi. That's what we should say mikomak vatir to tell you don't need the kayin, but it does need to be ladas. So this is supporting Rabbi Yochanan, who says that it has to be ladas. Okay, this is really what we got up to back on Sunday. Maskal of Sibarashi, Umi Amar Rabbi Yochanan Hachi. Does Rabbi Yochanan really hold like this that you need a kavana for chulin? Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Allah stam mishnah. Allah is like a stam mishnah tnan. This is the reason why I went back to the Mishnah before. Our Mishnah on Nomen Aleph, Naflo Sak and V'Shachta. Our Mishnah says that if a knife falls and it shechs, even though it shechs as properly as possible. And we said in the Gemara, it's only because it fell without any impetus. It wasn't thrown down by the owner. But if the owner threw it down, even though he wasn't intending to shecht, he just wanted to throw it in the ground, by pilahu kshera. In that case, it would be kosher. Even though his kavanah was not to shecht, his kavanah was just to throw the knife on the ground. And we said that it's Reb Nosson who says you don't need a kavanah. So, l'chayra, our Mishnah is a stam Mishnah, which we said is like Reb Nosson, and Rabbi Yochanan said halach is like a stam Mishnah. How could Rabbi Yochanan paskin that chulin requires kavana? If our Mishnah, which is a stam Mishnah, we say is like Reb Nosson, we paskin like Reb Nosson, we paskin like the stam Mishnah, according to Rabbi Yochanan. So tomorrow b'shchita afilu Rabbi Yonasan ben Yosef. Where's the Daled? He's masking Moida. I'm sure that's what it says. Moida, right? By shchita, the Gemara answers no. While it's true that Rabbi Yochanan holds that chulin needs kavana, shchita is different. Shchita does not need kavana. Even the Manda Amr, who Rabbi Yochanan is supported by, the Tana that he's using to show that chulin does need kavana, would be masking by shchita, you don't need kavana. Midagali Rachmana, Misasa Bekachim Pasul, the fact that the Torah says that someone who is Isaac in Kachim, and he does so unknowingly, and Rashi says what the basis for that is. Someone who shechs kachim without kavan is possible. The parikam. But the daf yud gimel, that it has to be l'rtzoincha. This is not. Don't confuse it with the one where kahana before. Mechlal the chulin loy be in kavan. And the fact that the Torah has to tell you that by kachim, it's not going to. It's going to be possible. So you see by chulin, a shchita of chulin does not need kavanah. So this is a specific limud that shchita of chulin is different than other types of chulin. From the fact that we have to say that shchita of kachim is puzzle, Vaisei says shchita of chulin would be kosher shaloi bekavan. Rabbanon, what about the Rabbanon who argue on Rav Nosson, and they say that the shchita in our Mishnah, right? Our Mishnah we said was like Rav Nosson, because we say Haipila would be a kosher. If he threw it down, it would be a kosher or a shchita. The Rabbanon disagree; they say it would not be. Rabbanon nehidale beinin kavana lezvicha lechaticha beinin. They say it's true that you don't. This is it's very geshmak alumnus, saying although you don't need a kavana that it should be a shchita, but you do have to have a kavana at least that you're trying to cut something. And the case that we're deducing from our Mishnah is where he threw the knife on the ground. He wasn't even intending to cut anything. So if he was throwing the knife to cut an apple, that would be a kavana that would be kosher for shchita. But if he's just throwing the knife, but he has no intention to cut, that's still not enough to be a kosher shchita.
The Mishnah is the case where the knife fell by itself.
Right. So we're learning from the diak of the Mishnah. We're talking about is the inference of the Mishnah, for the fact that the Mishnah said that if it fell by itself, it's not a good shchita. So you see that had he thrown it or had he dropped it, he pushed it down, that would be a good shchita. We're really saying the reverse of the Mishnah. And we said that was Reb Nosson. There's a lot of ping-ponging back and forth. But now we're asking on the Rabbanon who argue on Reb Nosson, because we've just brought him a pasuk to support Reb Nosson. What would the Rabbanon do with that pasuk? So we say the Rabbanon will be mechalik. They distinguish between someone who intended the knife to go, but didn't intend it to cut. That the Rabbanon would say that's what we that would not be. That's what our Mishnah would be. That's where their chalik on Reb Nosson would say it's not good. But they would agree that if the person intended to cut, that it would be a good shchita by chulin. Amarava baha zachneu Reb Nosson leRabbanon. On this, the Reb Nosson won over the Rabbanon, right? Because we see there's a Stam Mishnah like him. Miksev, he says the svara. Miksev v'chatachto v'zavachtachsev. The pasuk says you should be zeveach, meaning by kachim it says zevachta. It doesn't say you should cut it. He says this distinction that we're making in the Rabbanan between whether he intended to cut or he intended the knife to go, it's not supported by the words. The pasuk says zevachta. So if you're going to talk, that's where we're getting our source from for Reb Nosson, where Reb Nosson gets that a shchita of chulin is kosher, a shaloi bekavana. But there's no distinction there between cutting, where his intention was to cut or not. He's saying the pasuk said zavachta, it didn't say chatachta, it didn't say cut. So the chacham are making a distinction that's not supported by the basis for this limud. So therefore he says Reb Nosson is correct. Very interesting that Rava says that the Rabbanon he's arbitrating between Reb Nosson and the Chachamim based on he doesn't hold of the limud of the Chachamim. He's saying it's a logically incorrect limud. Dr. Mara, Hechi Dami Nida Shenensa. We started this Gemara when we started talking about whether Chulin needs kavan or not. We talked about an Isha who was toivel, for an Isha Nida who was toivel, benensa, where she did it unwittingly, or she did it against her will. It wasn't her impetus. It wasn't her choice to be toivel. What's this case? How has a person toivel unwillingly? Seems very strange.
Off a cliff.
That's what we're going to say. Right. So it's going to be one shot. So ilema the unsachaverta. If you'll say first of all, maybe usually einus means that someone forced. A bandit stood with a gun, or a friend told her, took her and dunked her under the water. She was standing by the side of the pool, and her friend pushed her in. Kavana de chaverta, kavana ma'al you see. Someone else's kavana is a full-fledged kavana. It's not considered that she wasn't mechaven, right? Because we see that by truma. If someone is mechaven to separate truma, that's a good kavana.
But you need to make the person a shliach.
I'm sorry.
She need to make the person a shliach.
No, she doesn't have to make the other person's kavana is the kavana for tefillah, right? If you're, I'll put it to you this way, right? When you're toivel a kli, right? You have a kli that you have to be toivel. That's tamei. What's the kli doesn't have a kavana. The person who's being toivel has the kavana. So the person who dunked her had the kavana.
But in order to take tiyuma, don't you need the bialim to?
Well, that's a different. You're right. You're correct. Right. Yeah. You're remembering correctly. Right. It's an issue with truma that you can't be term shalom midas.
Right.
But the issue is not that the truma is not a valid. It's not that it's a truma that was done shalom kavana. The issue is that you don't have authority to do it.
Right.
But it's not a lack of kavana. It's not that it was done unwittingly. It's that it was done without permission, which is a different thing. But I shouldn't have brought that in. The better example is a kli, right? If someone takes a kli and dunks it in the water, that's not considered that was done shalai kavana because the kli is obviously has no thoughts. You say the person who dunked it is the one who provides the kavana, who provides the intention. So to over here, if you dunk your friend, you were taivel her, and her tefillah is a good tefillah. It's a tefillah b'kavana. V'oid v'truma nachmi achla. The gabi truma, the gabi someone who is taivel in this manner, they'll even be allowed to eat truma. Right? We're talking about legabe chullin, but you could even eat truma, which is kachim, with such a tefillah. It's nan hachareshes v'ashaita v'asuma v'shenitra fadaita. Someone who is a chareshes cheresh shaita v'katan, doesn't say shait katan, or a suma, a blind person, is not able to physically check herself in order to do the tefillah of a nida. Shit v'daita or shaita, she's lost her mind. They could have someone else do the preparation for her tefillah in the mikvah, and then they could be toivel her in the mikvah, and then she could eat truma. So it's not just a kavana, sufficient kavana for chulin, it's even a sufficient kavana for kachim, which we know always requires kavana. So, okay, so this is not an eitzah to say that the oinus betfila that Rabbi Yochanan, that Rav says is good and Rabbi Yochanan says it's not good. Let's talk about what is nensa, because that would for sure be good, even according to Rabbi Yochanan. Amar Papa Rav Nasan, according to Rav Nasan, who said that that in our mission that the shchita can be done shaloi bekavana. If it's fell, it's going to be a kosher shchita. Shenaflim in agasha, like you said, someone who fell off a bridge, it's still going to be that's going to be sufficient. You don't need a kavana at all. L'Rabbanan sheyar delahaka. According to the Rabbanan, that they would say that if the knife fell, it's not enough unless there was an intention to cut. So too over here by the tefillah, if she just fell off the bridge, that was why we couldn't just say she fell off the cliff. Because according to Rabbanan, that's not sufficient. There has to be that this intent that she intended to do the act that she's doing. So it's talking about where she fell. She went down into the mikvah to cool herself off. She wanted to use the mikvah as a pool, but she wasn't intending to be taivel herself. So that's the case of shenensa, that according to the Rabbanan, it won't be a kosher tefillah. According to the Chacham, it won't be. According to Yochanan, it won't be a kosher tefillah. According to Rav, it would be. And Rav Yochanan, according to Rav. Amar Rav, Shachat Para, we're going to say interesting things that come out of all this. Shachat Para, someone who shechted the Para Aduma. V'shachat behema acheres ima. And at the same time, he wanted to shecht another animal with it. The divrei hakol psul. It's going to be puzzle, and there's two reasons why it's puzzle. First of all, we said there's a din that you can't be mesich das during any part of the avodah of the paraduma. And secondly, we learn from a pasuk that v'shachat oisa v'loy oisa v'chaverta. They cannot. It says directly that you cannot do another shchita together with the paraduma. So first of all, you're being mesich das, and second of all, you're not allowed to shech your paraduma when you shech something else with. The Gemara continues, Nishchata behema acheres ima. If Rashi explains beloy miskapen, this is a slightly different case. The first case was where he shechted another animal together with it on purpose. If another animal, he's sweeping the knife to cut the paraduma, and it also happened to cut a second para at the same time. Lirab nasan para psula, the para is going to be psula, behema kshera. The easier way to say it would be behema kshera para psula. So there's no hesach hadas. The hesach hadas is not a problem because it was unintentional that he cut the second one. So he wasn't intending to do anything else. But the problem is, what about the second issue that you're not allowed to shecht another animal? But like we said, since the behema is a kosher behema, the shchita Chullin is a kosher shchita. Therefore, that will passel the paraduma. The Rabbanon. Since the behema is not going to be a kosher shchita, he was not intending to shech that behema, so therefore it's going to be a pasul shchita. But the para is a kosher, so therefore he has nothing passeling the paraduma. He didn't do a successful shchita, so that doesn't passel it, and he certainly didn't have anything in mind. This was all unintentional. Practicing Gemara pshita. This is always a little offensive, right? When it's a very complicated cheshbon, and then it says pshita. What do I have to even tell this for? It's like Gemara, nishchata behema acheres l'ibnasan it's trichale. It has to tell you the din that we said when he shechted a behema acheres as he was shechting the paraduma, that according to Reb Nasan, the behema is kshera. So Aglamina v'shachat oisa amar achman v'loy oisa v'chaverta. It's not clear. I would have thought that maybe this din, that you can't shecht another animal together with the paraduma, is only if you do another paraduma together with this paraduma. Maybe v'loy oisa v'chaverta, a second paraduma, that's the only case of psul. So that the chiddush over here is that according to Reb Nasan, that the shchita Chullin is a kosher shchita, the paraduma will be pasul. We don't say that it has to be a second paraduma. Even a paras Chullin, even shchitas Chullin, is enough to shecht at the same time as the shchitas paraduma is enough to pass it. V'heichidami going to shachat shtei paras b'hadi yadadi. Ava behema de Chullin emaloi kamashmal. I might have thought it has to be two paras aduma at the same time, but behema de Chullin it would not pass. So kamashmal on that according to Reb Nasan, even that is enough to pass. And now the Gemara says, it's very strange for me that the first thing we said is pshita, and then the Gemara now just says the same, basically says what will come out according to this. Chatach delas ima, if you cut a vegetable along with your paraduma, divrei hakol psul, it's going to be pasul, like we said, because he's having a machshava. This is talking about we did it intentionally. This is the same thing as the first part, shachat para. Over here is chatach delas, where he cut the delas on purpose. So then he's mesiach das. Nechtecha delas ima, but if the vegetable got cut unintentionally along with the paraduma, divrei hakol kshera, everyone will agree it's kosher. Obviously, you don't have a problem of a second shchita, and since it's unintentional, you don't have a problem of hesach hadas either, and therefore it's kosher. Zok the Mishnah, nafla sakin v'higvia. If he's in the middle of doing the shchita, and then the knife fell down in the middle, and he picked it up. Naflu kela v'higvia. If his talus fell off, his yarmulke fell off as he was in the middle of doing the shchita, and he stopped the shchita to pick it up. Hishchez as a sakin va'af u'bachaver b'shabbat. If he was sharpening the knife And then when he was in the middle of doing the shechita, he got tired, and therefore his friend had to take over, had to stop and have a friend take over. In all of these cases, these are all different reasons of why a person would stop in the middle of the shechita. Im shah kadei shechita psula. If he stopped a long enough time to do another shechita, that's a shia. That's the first one of the 5 things that pass the shechita. Shia is pausing. If he makes a pause of the amount of time to do a shechita, it's possible. If Shimon disagrees, he says it doesn't have to be the amount of time to do a shechita. It has to be enough time to take the knife and show it to a chacham.
So that means it clearly paused like for quite some time.
Right. All of these are more like it doesn't mean like a hesitation in the middle.
Right. This is like
I feel like, and it's not really supported on anything. Maybe someone else knows. I feel like we're machmer that any kind of pause is no good. I think it's probably because we don't know how much these times are. As you'll see, it's not such a long time. That means, according to one man, it means you have the animal already there and just to swipe it. How long does it take to cut an animal's throat?
so we're talking about pausing. And now he goes forward.
He does part of the thing. Like goes halfway.
Yep.
He does like let's say one simon, or whatever it is. Let's say it's a bird, right? He does half the simon, and then he stops, and then he continues before he finishes the shrit.
Right. And we would think we'd make it treif.
We'll make a treif. It would make a treif or a nevela. That will be the next. That's the next mishnah. It will passel it one way or the other. Is it longer than going to bring it to a chacham? Not necessarily. Right? So it depends. Depends how long it is. It might be longer than a shchita. A shchita could be like 2 seconds. I mean, I think it's pretty short. Yeah. Listen, this is halacha. If your talus falls off, you got to make a new bracha. And I think that's not because of the amount of time. It's not really related to this, but it's a good thing to know. Your talus falls off, you have to when you put it on, you have to make a new bracha. It's considered hesach hadas. Okay. My kadei shchita. What does it mean? Kadei shchita, the amount of time that a shia will pass. Amar Rav, kadei shchitas behema acheres. The amount of time to shecht another animal. Amalei Rav Kahana Ravasi l'Rav, kadei shchita behema lebehema, oif loif, idim af behema leoif. When you say another behema, there's obviously 2 different types, two categories of animals. There's behemoths that need 2 simanim, and oif that needs 1 siman. An oif is, I think, shorter. 1 siman takes shorter than 2 simanim. So what do you mean? Do you mean certainly when you do a behema, it has to be the amount of time to do a behema? But if you do an oif, do you also is a shia there the amount of time of a behema, or is it even the amount of time of an oif? He says, I was not so close with Chavivi, who was his uncle. I did not feel comfortable enough to ask him this question. So he leaves it unresolved. Itma, Amarav. But Rav and Shmuel had opinions on this question. Rav says, if you're shechting a behema, the pause has to be the amount of time of a behema. By an oif, it only has to be the amount of time of an oif of 1 sim. Ushmul amar afilu behema la'oif. Even if you have a pause that's the size of that, even a oif, it has to have the pause the time of a behema in order to pass. V'chein chiyasa Rav and Amar Rav Yechon afilu behema la'oif. Rav Chananya amar kadei sheyavi behema acheres v'yishcha. Rav Chananya says it's not just enough to shecht another animal. You have to be able to bring another animal and shecht it. So it means you bring a behema even from somewhere else. That you're making a shear, you're saying you have to have enough time to bring an animal. What does that mean? Does it mean from Texas? Does it mean from your barn, or does it mean from the next room? it's Nasata Dvach Shir, and you've made it a inconclusive Shir. Amar Rapapa Oimedes Lahatal Ikabe Beinai. We're not talking about where it can be brought from anywhere. It means where it's standing there ready to be thrown down on the ground. Not that it's ready to be thrown down. It's talking about the animals nearby that you could pick up the animal and crouch it down and shech. And again, this is going to be the amount of time, depending on a smaller one, I guess, will go quicker. It's easier to pick up and put down. And a gasa, if you're shechting a large animal, the amount of time that it would take to pick up a large animal. It's hard to understand. I don't know why the amount of time of the shia, of the waiting, should be dependent on the animal you're shechting. Shia, I mean, I guess I don't know. I don't know what the basis of Shia is, right? Shia is halacha l'maishem Sinai ultimately, that you can't pause. So I guess we're assuming Shia that's the important amount of time is the amount of time. Significant amount of time is the amount that it would take to shech this animal. Amar Rav, hashtroichet b'saken ra, someone who's shechting with a blunt saken that takes, so you got to saw away. And the Gemara is assuming at this point that you're going to have to, afilu kol hayom kula, even if it takes the whole day, ksher, it's kosher. Or assumes even if you're taking breaks. Boy Rava, shois mao sheyitzurfu. What's the din if a person's shechting an animal and he makes pauses? None of them are long enough, the shear of a shear, but if you add them all together, it would be the shear. It would be long enough to be whatever the shear, the different one of the shiurim that we said before. Could you put them together? Could you add them together to make the shear? What about this example you just said? That Rava said if you shecht with a blunt socket, you can do it the whole day. And he's taking breaks. If you add up all the breaks over the course of the day, certainly that's going to add up to the shear. If he's doing it a whole day, it's hard to imagine he goes 12 hours straight, back and forth without breaks. And if he does breaks, they'll all add up to the shear of a pause. So no, it's talking about a very strong guy, and he just kept sawing away. What happens if he shechted the roiv of the simon? He did the roiv of the simonim, which is kosher, and then he was still doing the shechita, and he made a shia at that point. Is the shia din that as long as he's involved in the shechita, the shia compasel, or is it only as long as he's part doing the shechita, the part that's needed for the shechita? So the Gemara, teku. It remains a teku. Zok the Gemara, if he waited the amount of time to bring it to a chacham, my kadei bikor, for a chacham to check the night. Again, in Kainasat Rechel Shiurim, how do you know how far away the chacham is? So it's not a conclusive shear. Elakadei bikor teva chacham. We had this Gemara before. It means that the chacham is with the teveach, the sheichet is also a chacham. As long as it takes for him, to do his fingernail and check it, that's going to be the shear, and that's if you wait that long, that's going to pass him. Okay, we'll stop over here.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Shkoyach. Have a good day.